In the heart of bustling Lagos, hidden behind the roaring noise of traffic, the chatter of marketplace vendors, and the rhythm of pounding feet on hot pavement, lived a man whose name was whispered in boardrooms but unknown to the common people. Chief Adekunle Owolabi, a self-made billionaire known for his cold precision in business and his mysterious private life. Yet, for all his wealth, power, and the dozens of companies he controlled, Chief Adekunle had grown tired. Tired of flattery, of lies, of being surrounded by people who only smiled for the checks he signed. His heart, once full of dreams and pride, now felt like an empty shell. Every handshake felt rehearsed, every smile felt rehearsed, and every employee's loyalty felt bought, not earned. So one morning, just before dawn broke, Chief Adekunle made a decision that would change not just his life, but the lives of everyone working for him. He would go undercover as a beggar, live among the poor, and secretly test the hearts of his new employees at the grand Owolabi Group headquarters where a fresh wave of young interns had just been hired. Dressed in torn kaftan, dust-smeared sandals, and a fake beard glued to his chin, he left his mansion and private convoy behind and took the first rickety danfo to the office gates. His face hidden under a wide-brimmed straw hat. His pockets empty but his heart strangely alive. As he arrived at the gate, the security guard, young, strong, and proudly wearing the company's badge, glared at him with a curled lip, snapping, "Old man, move away. This is a business, not a charity home." Adekunle, staying in character, bowed gently and asked, "Please, just water or a leftover meal," but the guard shoved him with his baton. Stumbling backward, he sat by the gate, breathing heavily, watching the rush of employees walk past him. Some sneered, others whispered, a few even laughed cruelly, calling him Baba Ragman as they walked into the tall glass building. But amid the sea of indifference, one small act of kindness pierced through. An intern named Zainab, dressed in a faded blue dress and holding her file tightly, paused when she saw him. She hesitated, looked around, then knelt beside him, offering him her water bottle and a small packet of gari from her lunch pouch. "I'm sorry, Baba," she said softly. "This is all I have, but God sees you." Adekunle's chest tightened. He wanted to speak, wanted to hug this girl for reminding him that humanity still lived, but he remained in character. "Thank you, child. What is your name?" She smiled. "Zainab Musa. I'm here for my first internship. I pray they accept me." Adekunle nodded. "May God reward your kindness tenfold." She stood and walked away, not knowing that the man she had just fed controlled the very company she was applying to. Over the next week, Adekunle continued his disguise, arriving early, sleeping near the gate, and observing everyone. He noticed patterns. The young man in HR who pocketed transport allowances for fake names, the receptionist who insulted job seekers once they turned their backs, and even a supervisor who bullied interns in the basement print room. But in the middle of all this, Zainab kept standing out. Each day, she shared whatever little she had with him, even when she herself skipped lunch. Once, she defended him from another intern who tried to kick his old mat aside, saying, "If you can't help, at least don't hurt. We don't know who God sends to test us." Those words echoed deep in Adekunle's soul. He remembered his own mother years ago, who used to say the same thing when they begged for food in the slums of Ibadan. That night, for the first time in years, Chief Adekunle cried. Not tears of sorrow, but of hope, of the possibility that perhaps goodness had not completely died in the hearts of people. But not everyone was like Zainab. On Friday, just before the company's monthly assessment, one of the team leads, Mr. Emeka, caught him dozing beside the back in trance and shouted loud enough for everyone to hear. "This old fool again. Security. Remove him. Why should trash be lying outside a billion-naira business?" 2 guards dragged him away, tossing his sleeping mat into the gutter as the employees watched and laughed. That night, Adekunle didn't sleep. He sat in a dimly lit corner of a street stall, sipping from a bowl of pepper soup he had bought with money a kind janitor gave him. His hands trembled, but not from cold, from the pain of knowing these were the same people he trusted to uphold his legacy. Something inside him began to change. He would not just watch anymore, he would take action. But first, he needed to see how far kindness could go in a world driven by self-interest. So the next day he returned to the gate again, but this time he faked a fainting episode, falling right beside the entrance, clutching his chest. Most people stepped around him. Some even said, "Why don't they just remove this man for good?" But Zainab dropped everything, knelt beside him, screamed for help, and when no one came, ran out into the street and flagged a Kiki Napep herself, used her last naira to take him to a nearby clinic, and stayed with him for hours until he recovered. As he lay on the clinic bed, looking at the peeling paint on the ceiling, he knew, this girl was not just kind. She was the future. And she had no idea that the man she had just saved could, with one phone call, make her life beyond her wildest dreams. But Adekunle didn't want to give her just money. He wanted to give her something much rarer. A test, a path, and a reward that would prove her character not just to him but to the world. And so, with the next board meeting coming up, he disappeared into the shadows again. Only this time, preparing to return in his real identity, not as a beggar, but as the billionaire everyone feared, ready to shake his empire from its roots, and reward the one person who had seen a soul where others only saw rags. When the Monday sun rose over the sprawling skyline of Lagos, the towering Owolabi Group building gleamed like a temple of ambition, but its foundation was about to be shaken to the core. Inside, meetings were already underway, interns filed into departments, and the senior management prepared for the monthly staff appraisal, unaware that their carefully arranged illusions were about to be stripped away. Chief Adekunle Owolabi, now back in his true form, stood before his grand mirror in his private penthouse, no longer in rags, but dressed in a sharply tailored navy agbada embroidered with golden Adair symbols. His silver beard groomed, eyes no longer hidden behind grime but alive with silent fire. He adjusted his cufflinks and stared at his reflection with a strange mix of sadness and resolve. This was the man they bowed to. But they had shown no kindness to him when he wore nothing but hunger. The last 2 weeks as a beggar had opened his eyes, not just to the hearts of his employees, but to how blind power can be when surrounded by a wall of deception. But today was the day he would tear down those walls. His plan was clear. He would not scold, not rage, but reveal. Reveal the rot hidden under perfect suits. Reveal the diamond hidden in poverty. Reveal the truth with grace, and let it be its own punishment and reward. At exactly 9 a.m., he arrived at the Owolabi Group building, this time not on foot but in his signature black Mercedes-Maybach convoy, flanked by security and assistants. As he entered the reception, employees who had laughed at the crazy beggar days earlier now jumped to their feet, bowing, smiling, sweating, their masks quickly plastered on. But he said nothing to them. His eyes scanned the room for one face only, Zainab's. And there she was, walking quietly with her folder held tight, unaware that the very man she had risked her job for was watching her with pride. "Summon all staff to Conference Hall A," he ordered the receptionist, who nodded so fast her earrings flew off. Within 15 minutes, the hall was packed. Over 200 employees, from top directors to janitors to interns, stood silently, unsure what this surprise address was about. Chief Adekunle walked slowly to the podium, then paused, his gaze sweeping the room, pausing briefly on the faces that had spat cruel words on the old beggar by the gate. Then he spoke, calmly, powerfully, each word like thunder in velvet. "2 weeks ago, a poor old man appeared outside our gate. He wore rags, smelt of sweat and dust, and sat quietly. You remember him, don't you?" A few snickers erupted, some heads nodded, others shifted uncomfortably. "That man was me." The silence that followed could slice bone. A woman gasped, someone whispered, "Impossible." But the chief raised his hand. "Yes, I disguised myself. Watched you. Listened. I was insulted, shoved, ignored, and laughed at. Except by one person." He turned toward Zainab, who now looked like the ground would open beneath her. Zainab Musa. She stood frozen. Everyone turned. Few gasped. The same girl they mocked for talking to a madman. "Please step forward," Chief Adekunle said. Slowly, trembling, Zainab walked to the stage, eyes wide, confused, holding her file to her chest like a shield. When she stood beside him, he turned to the crowd. "This young woman gave me water when she had none, fed me when she went hungry, carried me to a clinic when you left me to die. And she never once asked for anything in return." The hall was dead silent, save for the hum of the air conditioning and the crackling of pride in Zainab's teary breath. "For her kindness," Adekunle continued, "I hereby appoint Zainab Musa as the new assistant to the executive director, with full salary, benefits, and a permanent position. Effective immediately." A gasp filled the room. Zainab's knees buckled, but Chief Adekunle caught her gently. "You earned this," he whispered. "Not because of what you gave me, but because of what you gave without expecting anything back." Zainab broke into tears, unable to even say thank you. The hall erupted into applause, some clapping in awe, others in shame. But Adekunle's expression changed now, growing colder. "As for the rest of you," he turned to his senior managers, "I saw more than I ever wanted to. Corruption, cruelty, indifference. You treat the desperate as disposable, yet you claim to uphold my values. From today a full audit begins. Anyone found abusing power, misusing funds, or mistreating juniors will be terminated and barred from the industry." Murmurs spread like wildfire. Faces paled. The HR officer who had stolen allowances slipped out the back, but guards blocked the door. "Mr. Emeka," Adekunle called, his voice low. "Step forward." The team lead who had shouted at the Beggar days ago came forward, sweat pouring from his collar. "Sir, I didn't know it was you." "That's the point," Adekunle said coldly. "You didn't know. So you showed your real self." He turned to the security guards who had kicked his mat into the gutter. "You will be retrained under direct supervision. One last chance. If I ever hear of another human being mistreated at this gate, you're gone." Then he turned back to the crowd. "This company will now have something more important than targets and revenue. It will have a soul. And anyone who cannot work with heart will no longer work here." The room fell into stunned silence again. But something shifted that morning. The energy, the awareness, the reality of leadership with conscience. Chief Adekunle walked out of the hall, Zainab following close behind, still unsure if she was dreaming. He led her to the top floor. His private office, filled with rare artwork, books of African history, and the quiet majesty of wealth that didn't scream but whispered. "This will be your desk," he said softly, pointing beside his own. "Learn. Grow. Make sure no one ever feels invisible in this building again." Her eyes welled again. "Sir, I was just trying to do what my mother taught me. That God watches everything." Adekunle smiled. Not the smile of a billionaire, but of a man finally seeing himself again through the eyes of someone honest. "Then let's make him proud together." That day, Zainab called her widowed mother in their small one-room home in Oshodi. She wept as she shared the news, her voice trembling with disbelief. Her mother dropped the phone and began to pray on her knees. News of the billionaire Beggar spread like wildfire across the city. Social media buzzed. Newspapers ran headlines like "Rags and Riches," "CEO tests staff by posing as beggar," and TV stations begged for interviews. But Adekunle refused all publicity. He said, "If you only do good for applause, then your goodness is for sale." Instead, he created a new foundation, the Zainab Trust, dedicated to supporting kind, hard-working young people who rise from nothing. And though the company began to thrive even more after these changes, something else began to blossom behind the scenes, something neither Adekunle nor Zainab had expected. A quiet bond, a deep mutual respect, a connection that began not with wealth or power, but with compassion. But what neither of them knew was that not everyone was happy with these changes. Jealousy brewed in dark corners, and one of the board members who had profited from corrupt deals began plotting to destroy everything, starting with Zainab. In the weeks that followed Zainab Musa's incredible rise from a humble intern to the executive director's personal assistant, a quiet transformation swept through the Owolabi Group. What once felt like a fortress of cold ambition now carried the warmth of something more human. Departments that once operated in isolated silos began to collaborate like breathing organs of the same body. Interns, once silenced by fear, now dared to ask questions. Even the morning air felt different. Softer somehow. And at the center of it all sat Zainab, wrapped in simple Ankara skirts, her soft spirit rooted in humility, yet her eyes sharper with every passing day. She didn't just take notes beside Chief Adekunal, she absorbed everything. The ethics behind decisions, the ripple effect of policies on families, the weight of every signature. She was learning not just how to lead but how to lead with heart. But beneath the blooming surface, darkness festered in silence. Envy, pride, and the bitter anger of a man who had ruled unchecked for too long. Barrister Victor Ajayi, one of the most powerful board members, had thrived in the shadows for years, manipulating contracts, funneling money through ghost companies, and intimidating staff into silence, all under the blind trust of Adekunal. But now, Zainab's presence was a threat. Her innocence was sharp, her conscience loud. She had access to confidential reports, financial trails, names buried in forgotten ledgers, and she had begun to ask questions. A missing document here, a suspicious payment there. Small pieces but dangerous enough to start a fire. She brought them to Chief Adekunal, unsure of what she'd uncovered. His brows furrowed. He ordered a quiet audit. And Victor began to feel his empire tremble. But it wasn't just fear that gnawed at him. It was humiliation. That a girl who once begged for food now stood beside the man he once considered a puppet. In his opulent mansion, among ivory sculptures and cold glasses of wine, Victor seethed. He couldn't touch Adekunal, not directly. But Zainab. She was new, vulnerable, too honest for her own good. And so the whisper campaign began. First in HR. Murmurs that Zainab had been promoted not for merit, but for personal favors. Then among senior women, quiet, poisonous questions. Did you see how close she sits beside him? How else could she rise so fast? Zainab felt the change like a shift in temperature. Smiles became tight. Conversations died when she walked in. Files vanished from her desk. She said nothing, believing truth would speak in time. But Victor wasn't done. He bribed a young, desperate IT staffer to fabricate a report, a forged email trail showing Zainab leaking confidential bids to an external firm, which, unknown to most, was owned by Victor's cousin. The trap was cruelly perfect. When the file reached Adekunal's desk, he read it in silence, his hands trembling. That Friday evening he summoned Zainab. She entered his office as usual, holding a file of procurement corrections. But the look on his face stopped her heart. "Zainab," he said slowly, "there's a serious allegation here." He pushed the file toward her. She read the forged emails, her breath catching. "This isn't me," she whispered. "I never sent these. Someone is framing me." He stood walking to the window. "I want to believe you," he said. "But the board is demanding action. There will be a disciplinary hearing." Tears blurred her vision. "You once told me God sees everything. You taught me truth matters." He turned. His expression softened. "And I still believe that. That's why I'm giving you one chance. 1 week. Prove your innocence." The days that followed were the loneliest of her life. Co-workers who once admired her avoided her. Even the security guard she once defended averted his gaze. She felt like a leper. But she wasn't done. She wiped her tears, prayed harder than ever, and returned to the office the next day. She sought help from Musa, a quiet IT assistant whose sick sister she had once helped anonymously. He remembered her kindness, and he believed her. "Something's wrong with that file," he whispered. "I'll help, but if I get caught I'm done." "Just help me find the truth," she said. "Even if it costs me everything." Together they traced server logs, timestamps, IP addresses, and found a hidden profile created under her credentials but logged in from a distant IP in Lekki. They documented everything. And by Monday they had proof. In the tense boardroom, where executives sat with judgmental eyes and Victor wore a smug grin, Zainab entered quietly and connected her USB. "Before you continue," she said calmly, "I have evidence." One by one, the forged trails unraveled. A timeline of manipulation, emails from Victor's cousin's firm, IP mismatches, and finally, a silent confession when Musa stepped forward. "I was ordered to fake the file. But I can't lie anymore." The room erupted. The accusations. Kiss. Adekunle said nothing. He simply signaled security. Victor, red with rage, was escorted out like a thief, shouting threats no one heard. The board voted for a full investigation. Zainab stood trembling, not in fear, but in silent victory. Adekunle turned to her with tears in his eyes. "You didn't just save yourself. You reminded us all what honor looks like." That evening, as the golden Lagos sun dipped below the skyline, Zainab sat on the rooftop garden alone, the wind brushing against her cheeks. She didn't cry out of sadness. She cried because she had endured. Adekunle joined her, holding 2 cups of tea. "You remind me of my mother," he said gently. "Honest, brave, full of grace." She smiled through her tears. "I only did what was right." "That," he whispered, "is the rarest thing of all." In the silence that followed, a new bond formed, something deeper than gratitude. But just as calm returned, a new shadow appeared on the horizon. Chief Adekunle's estranged daughter, who had been silent for years, had seen the news. And she was furious. Convinced Zainab was trying to take her mother's place, she vowed to return. And this time the war wouldn't be corporate, it would be personal. As the soft winds of July rolled over Lagos, bringing with them the scent of oncoming rain and renewal, peace seemed to return to the towering walls of the Owolabi Group, but not within the heart of the man at its center. Chief Adekunle, once steel-hearted and solitary, had changed more in 6 months than he had in the last 6 years, and all of it because of Zainab Musa, the girl with nothing but her faith and kindness, who had pulled him from behind his gold-plated walls and reminded him that power meant nothing if it wasn't used to lift others. Yet even as the boardroom corruption had been purged, the news articles had died down, and Zainab had found her rhythm at his side. An old pain stirred again. One that lived not in the office but in his own home, in the rooms he kept locked, the photographs he couldn't face, and the voice he hadn't heard in nearly 4 years, that of his only daughter Amira. When she returned, it wasn't with fanfare or forgiveness. It was with fire. Dressed in sleek European fashion and followed by 2 bodyguards, Amira Owolabi stormed into the Owolabi mansion with a fury that rattled the very marble tiles her heels struck. "So this is what you've become, Baba," she spat, slamming her designer purse on the mahogany table. "Letting some roadside girl fill my mother's chair." Adekunle, stunned by the sudden intrusion, could barely rise from his reading chair. "Amira," he said slowly, "I didn't expect." "Expect me? Course not. You were too busy rebuilding your empire with your pet project." His chest tightened. "Zainab is not." "Don't say her name," she snapped. "I've seen the papers, the photos, the whispers. You gave her my mother's pendant, didn't you? The one you swore would never leave our family." His silence confirmed it. That pendant, given to Zainab after she had proven her innocence, had once belonged to Adekunle's late wife, a quiet woman who had died of heart failure when Amira was barely 20. Since then, father and daughter had grown apart, their pain colliding with pride until Amira walked away, claiming the world and promising never to return until she was needed. And now, with Zainab shining where she once stood, Amira felt betrayed. She hadn't known the girl's story, only seen the headlines. Intern who changed a billionaire's heart. Zainab Musa, the girl who humbled a corporation. And in her wounded eyes, those weren't signs of virtue, they were signs of manipulation. Over the next few days, tension filled the house like smoke. Zainab, unaware of the storm that had descended, kept to her role, polite, humble and distant. But Amira watched her every move, twisting every smile into suspicion, every gesture into strategy. And then, one morning, Zainab entered the main hall to find Amira waiting with 2 lawyers. "We want her removed from all executive decisions," Amira told her father coldly. "She's not family. She has no legal standing. And I want my mother's pendant returned." Zainab froze, her face paling. "I never asked for it," she said softly. "He gave it to me. Because you played him," Amira barked. "You think a few acts of kindness make you worthy of what I lost?" Chief Adekunle stood, his voice thunderous now. "Enough, Amira." But Zainab lowered her eyes. "She's right," she whispered. "I never wanted this. I'll leave." "No." Adekunle stepped forward, anguish in his eyes. "Zainab, you are the best part of this company now. You showed me what love, honesty, and loyalty look like again. You cannot leave because of her jealousy." But Zainab turned to him, and her voice, though gentle, shook like thunder. "If staying means destroying your bond with your daughter, then I've failed everything I stood for." That night, she packed her few belongings, returned the pendant, and left the Owolabi mansion in silence. She moved back into her tiny flat in Owolabi, where her mother waited with open arms. No press, no tears. Just silence and peace. The company felt her absence like a missing heartbeat. Meetings lacked their soul. Staff returned to old patterns. Even Adekunle, who tried to go about his day with authority, found himself pausing by her empty desk, staring at the mug she left behind, the one with "Never forget to be kind" printed on it. Amira stayed, believing she had won, but the victory felt hollow. She wandered through the mansion like a ghost, unable to fill the silence Zainab had left. And one evening, as she reviewed her mother's old journals, something she hadn't dared touch in years, she found something that shattered her. A letter, handwritten by her mother just months before her death. "My darling Amira, if you ever grow hard like your father once was, let your heart be softened by kindness. And if another woman one day earns the pendant I once wore, let her wear it proudly, for love is not replaced, it is continued." Amira broke down. The letter wasn't a command. It was a mirror. Her mother had known someone like Zainab would come. And instead of protecting her father's legacy, Amira had nearly destroyed it. The next morning she drove alone. No guards, no pride. She went to Owolabi, found Zainab's humble apartment, and waited outside in the rain. When the door opened, she stood silently, drenched, eyes red. "I'm sorry," she said. "I was afraid. Of losing my father. Of losing what my mother left. But I see now, you didn't take anything. You gave him back to me." Zainab, stunned, pulled her inside. They spoke for hours, not as enemies, but as women who loved the same man in different ways. One as a daughter, one as a savior. Later that evening, Amira called her father. "Come," she said. "It's time." In Zainab's small home, under dim light, the 3 of them sat together. Adekunle wept openly. Not from weakness, but from relief. "I thought I had to choose," he said. "But now I know. I don't." From that day, something beautiful bloomed. Zainab returned to the company, but this time not as an assistant. She was promoted to head of ethics and culture, leading a new department focused on transparency, humanity, and compassion in business. Amira joined the board again with humility, often quoting Zainab in her speeches. And Chief Adekunle, the man who once tested others by pretending to be a beggar, now opened a foundation for the homeless, using his experience to rebuild lives from the streets up. As the years passed, stories were told, not just of a billionaire's fall and rise, but of a girl who changed him without asking for anything in return. And on the day the new Owolabi headquarters was unveiled, there was a statue near the gate. Not of Adekunle, not of Amira, but of a woman kneeling to offer a bottle of water to a beggar. Below it, a plaque read, "Kindness is the greatest power we'll ever own." And beneath that, in tiny gold letters, "Zainab Musa, the girl who reminded us all how to be human."